After watching this, you will want to hop onto Archer and be the master of inflicting debilitations and obliterating weak points with deadly precision. Archer has some of the most surprising damage hidden away and in its combos and in its skills. It's not a vocation that is upfront with what it has to offer. Being one of the only two nimble vocations in the game, you can perform very satisfying combos that flow together perfectly and deal some respectable damage. The Archer excels at long-range combat, dealing debilitations that are really quite overpowered, like torched, blighted, or drenched. You are also best equipped to hit enemy weak points and honestly obliterate them with deadly precision, being very potent against golems. The Archer really has a ton of tricks up its sleeve, so stay tuned if you really want to see what it has to offer. Alright, let's get into the nitty-gritty of what makes the Archer as potent as he is. First up, Manifold Shot is the upgraded form of Barrage Shot. Knocks back 3 arrows and fires them back to back, dealing good and consistent damage. This is great for general use and is it is in almost every Archer's kit. Definitely not a bad one to go with. Next up we have Cascade Shot, which is the upgraded form of Sweep Shot. Fires multiple arrows in a horizontal volley, does good damage and great to deal with trash mobs, works almost like a shotgun. But you have to be in close range, and being an archer, close quarters isn't really your job. So wouldn't recommend. Next up, Deathly Arrow. It's the upgraded form of Dire Arrow. Lines up a deadly shot, dealing great damage along with good stagger. This is also in almost every archer's kit. It is the most reliable single shot damage dealing option the fighter has in its arsenal. Very good, and couldn't overstate how useful this is. And you can pin smaller enemies to walls, which is very funny. Lancian Sight is the upgraded form of Keen Sight. Basically gives you a snipe ability, but honestly this isn't worth it at all in my opinion, and in my experience it is very inconsistent with the aiming, and it doesn't do enough damage to justify using up the skill slot for this particular ability. Next up we have Tempest Shot, which is the advanced form of Torrent Shot. You kneel down and fire a consistent volley of arrows back to back. This is one of the archer's best DPS options on a downed target. If you hit a dragon or a griffin in its weak point, either its head or a dragon's heart, you will deal some insane amounts of damage. Now, this will go as long as you have stamina, and like I said, deals very, very consistent and good damage. Not a bad skill to have at all, and honestly this is also in almost every archer's kit. Next up we have Spiral Arrow, which is the upgraded version of Whirling Arrow. Shoots an arrow that spirals, causes some decent stagger, not the most useful as it falls off against larger targets, and the damage ticks really aren't that great. Personally I wouldn't use it, but it is a cool ability and fun to see things, especially the smaller targets, get staggered. If you hit them with this, smaller targets won't move, but it's not worth an ability slot in my opinion. Now, the next 4 skills, you'll need the correct arrows to use them. You can either craft these arrows or buy them. So let's go over them. These are the debilitation skills that Archer has. Erupting Shot is the advanced form of Exploding Shot. Fires an arrow that sticks to a target or weak points and explodes, dealing some surprising amounts of damage. Let's be honest. It has a delayed explosion if left on the target, however you can set it off immediately by firing at it again with a regular arrow. You can also climb onto an enemy and stick the arrow directly to a spot where you want it. However, as an archer, you have no business climbing your target. Incendiary shot is the upgraded version of tarring shot. Fires an arrow that tars the enemy. Not as useful on its own, but if you have the fire affinity or the erupting shot, you can use it to cause the torched debilitation, which basically is an advanced form of burning the crap out of something. It does some respectable amounts of damage over time. Great when facing an enemy weak to fire, useless against dragons though. Deluging shot or drenching shot. With this, you fire an arrow that causes the drenched debilitation. It slows down targets on their own. However, when you use a ice affinity, your target gets frozen almost immediately. However, I don't think it is as useful as some of the other debilitations, and I wouldn't use my slot, any one of my 4 skill slots for this particular skill. Innocuous shot is the upgraded version of blighting shot. Now this is one of the most surprising debilitations in the game, or most surprising skills in the game, let me put it that way. With this, you fire an arrow that causes the blighted debilitation, causes a very small amount of damage over time, and really it ends up being very underwhelming. However, when it's upgraded, it has a nasty trick up its sleeve. When fired off, it causes the innocuous debilitation. Now, you have to shoot your target once, then he is blighted. You shoot him a second time, that causes the innocuous state, which ticks off your enemy's health stupidly fast. Like honestly, it is very amusing to see a dragon lose health that fast. Like short from what's this called, magic archer or warrior, this deals the fastest damage in the game. And if you continuously hit your target with this, they're going to die very fast. The only drawback of this is that your arrows are very expensive to craft or to buy. And next up we have probably the most disappointing skill, well, disappointing Meister skill in the game, Heavenly Shot. When this shot hits, it deals very respectable damage, but it is one of the most inconsistent and unreliable attacks in the game. Probably the most, if we're being honest. The aiming is very tight. You have to hit with pinpoint accuracy, and even if it looks like you are going to hit with pinpoint accuracy, sometimes it ends up whiffing and it leaves you without stamina, which causes you to be vulnerable. So honestly, not the best in my opinion. I wouldn't use it. I would rather use the other skills we'll get to shortly. Next up, we have what I would consider to be the most ideal setup for an archer vocation. So let's get into it. First up, we have Deathly Arrow. This is really a very good way to get some knockdown as an archer. It deals very good damage. As you can see there, it pins an enemy to a wall. So very good shot. Deals, outside of Heavenly Shot, this deals the most damage with a single arrow. Next up we have Tempest Shot. With this, you use this on a downed target, either the head or the heart of a dragon, and any other enemy you target their head or their eye. Really respectable damage coming out of this particular skill. Next up we have Manifold Shot. This is to deal with smaller targets that are not classified as bosses, because this does very good damage and it takes those smaller targets out very quickly. Even later into the game, your medium-sized targets take very, very good damage from this skill. And then we have the flexible slot, which I personally choose Innocuous Shot because you can use it against almost every enemy in the game, where I feel Torched is not as widely useful as the Innocuous Shot, and the Tarring Shot you can only use if you have someone in your party that can deal fire damage, or if you yourself sacrifices a skill slot for Erupting Shot to go with Tarring Shot or Incendiary Shot. So I personally think Innocuous Shot, you'll get your most use out of Innocuous Shot. And then we head into the final section of what makes a good archer, in my opinion. So, ambuscade. You engage with combat or with your enemies as an archer before they see you most of the times. So, having an extra damage boost at the start of any fight is always very useful. Next up we have lethality. I don't need to explain this. You deal more damage to enemy weak points. That's all I'm going to say. Subtlety. As an archer, you need to avoid the aggro of your enemies. You are in the back line firing off your volley of arrows from a distance. So if you continuously draw aggro of enemies and get interrupted, your entire party suffers because you cannot deal your damage as well. Everyone needs to pull their weight. Verve. This is honestly a flex slot. I like Verve because most bows deal physical damage and it scales off of the strength attribute, and having more damage, never a bad thing. Archer doesn't deal the most damage, it deals very good damage, and having some extra, like I said, always a good thing. As an archer, you will also be spamming your skills quite a bit. So Zeal is what we're going for. It is very crucial to have that extra stamina in the tank because it adds up over time. You use less stamina when performing a weapon skill, and you can squeeze out another shot or two of any sort of skill than you normally would. So obviously very good. And then also another flexible slot, dominance. I like the extra knockdown power because as an archer, if you knock something down, they can die very fast if you unload your the Tempest arrow into them. So that wraps up our augments. Archer has some of the coolest looking combos and can really be a force to be reckoned with when you use it correctly. I personally did sleep on this vocation for the majority of my first playthrough. I started out as Archer, felt it very underwhelming. You are not the strongest as an Archer when starting out, but it really gets up there the further you get into the game. I plan on doing masterclasses for all vocations in an effort to aid newcomers and give them a good understanding of their favorite vocation. But if you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching, and please consider leaving a like. It really helps me out a ton. And as always, if you have disagreed with anything I said, please feel free to engage with me in the comments and we can have a civil conversation and learn from each other. That being said, I'll have more coming your way soon. Thank you again for watching.